What's going on, college football fans? Welcome back to the First and Long College Football Show. I'm your co-host, as always, joined by my co-host Mason. Just another sleepy Saturday, right? No good games on this weekend. Double-digit spreads on a bunch of these games. College football delivers again, folks. Another Saturday in the fall, brought to you by college football, and it was of the best variety, my friend. This was a very, very entertaining Saturday, week 13. Very, very crazy stuff, man. And it's always these sleepy Saturdays. And if you're sleeping on any Saturday in that SEC, really throughout college football, but specifically the SEC this year has just been wild, wild, wild stuff. And today was no exception, man. Whoo, you ready to talk about this? We got a doozy this weekend, buddy.
I think I'm ready. I don't know how we can match the intensity and the upset factor and the entertainment that we just saw. But we're gonna attempt to. This was really exciting for me. We were talking about it earlier, Mark, but I had a friend text me and say, "Man, I just feel like college football just was a letdown this weekend." And this was a casual fan and friend of mine, but I couldn't think any further from the truth. I thought it was amazing. I thought this was an absolutely incredible weekend for college football. Can't wait to dive into it with you all and hear what you all have to think about this weekend. What did your team do? What are the big upsets that you guys thought were huge? Who do you think is going to be in the college football playoff? I think that's a big question right now for a lot of people, and I don't want to make it all about that. This was a really incredible weekend in itself, absent of a college football playoff and the hopes that some of these teams had. But Mark, this was incredible, and I don't know where you want to start, but let's get into it.
Well, I mean, gosh, where do you start on a Saturday like this? I think we'll kind of start as best of chronological order as we can, because one of the biggest upsets of the day happened earlier in the day, and then we'll work our way to what we just saw. Um, a couple more upsets, of course, in the SEC late in the night. There, we just watched Auburn beat Texas A&M and totally shatter Texas A&M's hopes of making it to the SEC championship. More than likely, they'd have to beat Texas. I don't know if that's going to be able to be a thing. I mean, that's obviously something we're going to talk about a lot this upcoming week. But Florida taking care of business against Ole Miss. Ole Miss turns the ball over a season high 3 times in this game, but the turnovers at the end of the game were just so crucial. And Jackson Dart has been just smooth as butter all year. And then right there in crunch time, man, it just didn't look very good. Forcing the football. Trey Harris obviously goes down in this game, and that hurt badly because he's your real deep threat. But there's other wide receivers on this wide receiver core for Ole Miss, so don't get it twisted. Caden Lee, a fellow Georgia guy, a guy from Kennesaw, Georgia, a freshman. He had over 100 yards receiving and has had a great season. But look, we talked about this game ad nauseum this week, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense on paper, but Florida has got momentum. And I think that Billy Napier is I think Billy Napier is kind of starting to leave his fingerprints on this program. And the reason I say that, this game and the last couple of games that Florida has played, it's looked more like Billy Napier's old team. And they don't get a ton of points. They don't get a ton of yards, but they get the most points out of the yards that they get. They maximize that. They're very efficient, and that's what we saw out of Florida today. They took advantage of their opportunities. Johnson coming back at running back. They ran the ball pretty well in this game, over 160 yards rushing. Lagway did his thing again. Look, not the most efficient at the quarterback position for Lagway, but he hits pop plays. And Badger at wide receiver just went off today. I didn't even know who the hell Badger really was. I'm going to be honest with you. And I sure enough do after today. Florida's got
Yeah.
them, and there's a little bit of a sign of life there in Gainesville, Mason. And maybe Billy Napier does have something going. What do you think about what you saw this weekend? Ole Miss, I thought just played one of their worst games of the year for sure. But Florida had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, I really like what I saw out of this Gators program. Y- you go back to when the AD for Florida said that Billy Napier is our guy. And since then, Florida has played really well. I mean, at the time, I was looking at that sort of um, that piece of what Florida was doing, and I'm thinking, man, I don't really know about this. I don't know about Billy Napier. I don't know about this Florida program. I don't know that they're on the right trajectory. But since then, they beat two um, top 25 opponents for the first time since 2018. I think Florida's on the right track here,
And they're
and
going
really
they're
like.
going bowling, Mason. It's been forever.
It's been forever.
Big
It's
deal.
absolutely crazy. I saw where Dan Mullen was kind of commenting on this game, and it's just kind of funny because Dan Mullen, obviously the former Florida Gators head coach, was kind of hard on this team for a while. Kind of felt like I think he was taking a stab and saying like, "Hey, y'all probably shouldn't have fired me," um, and and here all of a sudden, Florida's won two ranked matchups back to back, and they're going bowling. Nobody thought they would go bowling. Looking at this schedule preseason, and I mean, this is just a phenomenal job by the Gators to beat Ole Miss. This isn't Vanderbilt. This isn't Mississippi State that they beat to go bowling. This is Ole Miss, who has been really good, who beat Georgia, who has been really good defensively. You scored 24 points against them, which is probably like the max that you would expect Florida to score against this defense. But they did that, and then their defense held up. Their defense got the pressure that they needed to on Jackson Dart in this football game to win it. I was really impressed by it, and
Yeah.
really impressed by the Gators. The trajectory for next year is there. They're going bowling this year. They're probably going to win next week against Florida State. So, 7-win season, given the schedule that they had, that's pretty impressive. I really like where this Florida program is heading. Just want to see them recruit a little bit better and get some more players out of the transfer
That's what you
portal
do
to
now. You
really
got to go get on the
make a
trail right
push.
this second while it's hot.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep, and there were apparently a few, or at least a couple of recruits that they were expecting to have on campus this week. They ended up going to Texas. Jamie
Mm,
French, the 5-star wide receiver, is one of them. I think there was a um, offensive lineman who was a 4-star who also went to Texas instead of Florida. But I expect them to do some good things in the recruiting. You know, regardless of this outcome, I think that Florida will recruit pretty well. I think that they'll get some players out of the transfer portal this year to complement Lagway and the offense that they have right now. But huge win for Florida. Yeah, I mean, what more can you say about the job that Billy Napier has done
yep.
since probably the middle of this season?
Investor better in the comment section. Glad my Gators turned it around this year. Congratulations, man. I mean, seriously, because I'm a Georgia fan. Okay, I'm about as close as you can get to the Florida fan base, right? Without being part of it. We pay very close attention to what goes on at Florida as a Georgia fan, of course. Um, and it's been a tough go at it here lately, and I'll just say that. And um, got to go get on the recruiting trail. Early signing day is almost here. That is something that's going to be talked about on this channel at least a little bit as that nears. But that is getting really close, and Florida is not where they need to be there. This win, I think, will help a lot. And Not to mention all the extra bowl practices. When you go to a bowl game, you get 15 extra practices with all your guys. And if you don't go to a bowl game, you don't get to practice with those guys. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal. All right, let's keep it going because we've got so much to talk about. Congratulations to the Gators. Ole Miss is, for right now, put on the back burner, Mason. Not looking like there's any
Yeah.
chance, right? I mean, for them to make the college football playoff at this
Well,
point. Um,
it's interesting because I'm looking at Ole Miss with 3 losses, and vibes wise, at least, I don't know if the record necessarily matches up, but if you've got 3 losses with Ole Miss, 3 losses with South Carolina, who would you rather have in the playoffs? Because I would rather see South Carolina at this point.
well,
But
well,
Ole
I'm
Miss
well.
has the win against Georgia.
Let's assume South Carolina beats Clemson, and then let's make
Mhm.
that consideration because obviously they'd have to be beating Clemson there on that last game of the year. So, look, I mean, we'll see how it pans out. It's hard for me to even wrap my head around that right this second, but I think the losses for South Carolina make more sense and are more explainable. Um, Ole Miss has got a couple of bad losses now, you know,
Yeah.
and not to mention, I mean, this actually kind of hurts Georgia in a sense of college football playoff hopes. But obviously, after today, Georgia is going to looks like they'll have an SEC championship on their plate. And could possibly have a bye. So we'll talk more about that. Let's get through all this other stuff first because we're not even there yet. We got to go through these other games and kind of explain
Yeah.
where we're at with all this stuff. But I want to talk about Indiana, Ohio State next. This was a game that everybody was so excited about this weekend. Mason, my under did not hit because I got a push here. So Vegas called it perfect. Actually, the betting public called it perfect and got that number up to 53. So the betting public, lots of pushes there on the total in this game. Look, let's just call a spade here. Um, Ohio State, I think, has the best defense in the country. Okay. First and foremost, I think this is the best defense in the country, especially whenever they get after the quarterback like they did this weekend. Whenever coach is dialing up the pressure like that, Ohio State is hard to deal with, man. It's going to take one hell of an offensive line to be able to deal with that. We were concerned about Indiana matching up on the line of scrimmage against that defensive line, particularly. Um, yeah, Ohio State was just a whole different caliber of bullet than what Indiana had seen all season, Mason, and that was very apparent. Only 151 yards, I believe, total for Indiana in this game offensively. Obviously, that's never going to be able to get it done. I don't know if hardly anybody's ever won a game with 150 yards total in modern college football. Um, that defense is they get a lot of credit. Will Howard, very efficient day. Other than the interception, Will Howard had an extremely efficient day. I thought the wide receivers made some plays whenever they needed to make some plays. And obviously, Caleb Downs, the return punt, was a big part of this game, a big part of the momentum swing in this game. More like not momentum swing, but more like a nail in the coffin, I guess you could say. Um, yeah, Ohio State's one of the best teams in the country, man. What can I say? We already knew that. I mean, we've had them ranked in the top 4 for how long now in our rankings here on First and Long College Football. Today just kind of reinforced that for me a little bit. I think this is one of the best defensive units in the country. And while I don't think that this offense for Ohio State is as high flying as like a CJ Stroud offense, you know, it's good in different ways, and they can play efficient football and win that way. Um, and with this defense, there's no reason to think that if the dominoes fall Ohio State's way, they've got just as good a chance to win a national championship as anybody this season.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, this defense gave me fits early because it seemed like Indiana was going to be able to score early on. Indiana got the 3 and out on the first possession of the game, the first series of the game. Ohio State gets the football on offense. Indiana shuts them out, and then Indiana goes down and scores at will on the first drive of this football game. And I'm thinking, man, this looks really good for Indiana. That looked a lot easier than I thought it should. And then Ohio State just absolutely puts their foot on the gas in the second quarter. They go on a run, 14-0 in the second quarter, 14-0 in the third quarter, 10-8 in the fourth quarter. I will say though, I had Indiana at plus 2.5 in the fourth quarter. 10-8. You know what, Mark? That's a cover. That's a cover right there. Feel
I was
really good about
wondering. I
that.
actually was wondering that. So didn't you have it at 2.5?
2.5
Let's
by
go.
half a point. I freaking covered.
Hell yeah, dude.
Um,
You knew it all
but
along.
I knew it. No
Literally.
sweat at all. Actually, when Ohio State scored the touchdown late, let me. I'll let you guys kind of play through my sweating here in the fourth quarter. So Ohio State gets a field goal right in the fourth quarter. I'm like, all right, 3-0. No big deal. Like we need a touchdown. Indiana knows that. We need a touchdown. They get the touchdown and the 2 points. And I'm like, all right, we're good. Like I went ahead and penciled it in. We're good. And then Ohio State goes down and scores a touchdown. And I'm like, holy shit. I lost it. I'm not very good at math, mind you. So I'm thinking like, oh, we're done, And then I go back and look at it. And I'm like, all right, we're good. 2 points. Because they went for two, right? On that last play, I ended up covering there. So huge play for me. But nonetheless, Indiana, dude, in this game, I feel like the special teams errors killed Indiana. I I don't I still feel like Indiana
Yeah.
could have won this football game. I don't look at this score and think Indiana, if they were on a neutral site or at home, I still don't feel like Indiana would have lost this game. I'm not
Yeah.
looking at this and saying, in other words, that because Indiana has had a weak schedule and they're 10-0 at this point, that they don't belong in the college football playoff. I'm not ready to
No,
say
I'm not
that.
ready to say that either. No. Mm-mm. Yeah.
I think that they could beat some teams in the playoff. I love Kurt Signetti, and dude, it about brought me to freaking tears to hear Kurt Signetti after this football game say, "Well, all good things have to come to an end." That was the opening statement of his press conference at the end of this game, and I just thought, man, that was the first thing you've ever said that I did not agree with,
Yeah.
because I still think that this team has a lot in front of them. Not saying that they're going to win a national championship, they're not. But I think that they belong in the college football playoff. I think that they could win a game in the playoffs, if not one or two. I like the Hoosiers, and I think that they were probably 4 plays away from winning this football game, and that's
Yeah.
about it. The special teams got a little bit out of hand. The botched punt where the punter just didn't catch the football. That was a huge part, led to a touchdown, and then you had Caleb Downs return a punt for a touchdown. That's 14. That's a 14-point swing right there. And then outside of that, there were probably three more plays.
Yeah.
You handle those plays, you win the football game. Indiana couldn't. If they were at home, that number probably lessens to 2 plays, right?
Right.
So with 2 plays, I think Indiana could win that football game, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to see them in the playoffs. I know that Kurt Signetti is going to be prepared for the playoffs. I'm not saying that what he said in the post game press conference necessarily meant that he's laying down, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more, I guess, angst from him in this football game, or after the football game, to say, we're ready for the next game. We're ready to line up and play the next game right now. We don't even need a week. right? I would have liked to see a little bit more aggressiveness from him because I do think that this committee is going to give them another opportunity moving forward.
Yeah, well, and PSU Jim in the comment section just stole the words literally right out of my mouth. Bama and Ole Miss going down, and Texas A&M obviously losing a game this weekend, losing to Auburn. We'll talk about that one in a minute as well. That really is helping Indiana a lot in this situation, right? That there's no doubt about it. Um, uh, Indiana, I think, even though they lost this weekend, they won in other ways. So there was definitely some consolation this weekend, and not to mention it's Indiana's first loss. And if we're just being real, um, with the way everybody's losing 2 or 3 games this year, Indiana's in a really good spot. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Penn State deserves to be ranked as high as they do. Then why would Indiana not be deserving to be ranked? Like, I don't think Penn State deserves to be where they're at as high as they are in the rankings. And I don't think, I think Indiana is just as good a team. I'd love to see that football game, by the way. Gosh, I wish we would have got to see Penn State and Indiana this season. That would have been huge. But yeah, I think Indiana's got a good shot to get in there. All right, let's keep it going, guys. We've got so much to talk about. I want to really jump to this Oklahoma-Alabama game. I know there's other games to talk about, and we're going to get to those. We got to talk about Boise State. We got to talk about BYU going down again. We've got just all kinds of stuff galore. Obviously, Notre Dame flexing their muscles this weekend. They benefit from a lot of this stuff that's happened this weekend. Texas flexed their muscles on Kentucky towards the end of the game anyway. So we as I said, Texas A&M went down to Auburn. I'm sure y'all were all watching that one, but we got to talk about this Alabama at Oklahoma game here, Mason, because this one this just absolutely blew my mind. I got to pull up the stats because I want to make sure that I accurately depict what happened here and make sure that I saw this correctly earlier, and I did. If you would have told me that Oklahoma passed for 68 total yards, passing in this game and won by 3 touchdowns, I would have referred you to the loony bin. I mean, and I'm being serious. I texted my dad, and if you're new to this channel, you probably, long story short here, our grandpa is a big Oklahoma Sooners fan, huge Oklahoma Sooners fan. Congratulations to you, Pop. If you're watching this or you're watching this later, he does watch the channel. Congratulations. And Pop is in his 80s, and my dad, who's Mason's uncle as well, took him out there and drove all the way from Georgia all the way to Oklahoma to go watch this game and sit out there in the freezing cold. And it was honestly, it was Pop's chance to go see all his family out there. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I texted my dad before the game, or he texted me first. First thing he said was, very windy, will play a factor in the game today. That's what he that's the first thing he texted me, right?
Boots on the ground.
We have boots on the ground in Norman, Oklahoma. And anyway, I texted him during the game, and you guys are going to know what play I'm talking about. When Alabama lined up and they threw that basically Hail Mary to the corner of the end zone, that was, I don't know what the explanation is going to be on that penalty.
No.
I'm waiting to hear from it. And this is exactly why, guys, we've got to have referees going into press conferences at the end of these games and answering questions. Now, Alabama was down multiple scores at this point. So this by no means would have been necessarily something that changed the game or whatever. Alabama was down pretty bad at this point already. So I don't want to take anything away from Oklahoma here, but that was not a penalty. And I texted my dad and I said, I think that God wants Oklahoma to win this game. That's what I texted him. And he was like, yeah, yes. Unbelievable stuff by Oklahoma. That defense is ferocious. They saved their best for one of the last games here at the end of the year, Mason. An absolutely gutsy performance. Danny Stutzman is the absolute just perfect college football example of what you want to be. A guy that sticks it out at a program through thick and thin, makes NIL money, donates a bunch of it to his teammates, and gets to kind of go out on a win like this. I'm happy for guys like that, man. What a good story. This all around, this game just gave me some feel good, just some feel goods. I don't know. Jalen Milroe played horrible. That I'm not gonna lie to you guys. That made me feel good. I can't even lie to you.
Mark.
I am. I don't try. I don't really wish anybody to do bad or whatever. But that guy's a dick, and I don't like him. And maybe it's because I'm a Georgia fan and he kicks our ass every time we play him, and that's so true. But I can't stand the dude, and this was a humbling experience. I know that it was. And if you're an Alabama fan, I know you're hurting right now, but I mean, it's your third loss. You should be used to it this year. I mean, come on, get over it. 13 first downs total for Alabama in this game, 234 total yards for Alabama in this game. I can't remember the last time I've seen anything like that. 70 yards rushing for Alabama in this game, Mason. I mean, I can keep going. I mean, the stats, 3 turnovers. Oklahoma won the possession battle. That was the part that was the most surprising about this, man. How was Oklahoma able to all of a sudden sustain drives and run the football like they did? That was just astonishing to me. 257 yards rushing for Oklahoma?
But it shouldn't be that surprising given what they did last week. They barely lost. I think it was last week to Missouri, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a come from behind win from Missouri, and
Yeah.
it was kind of fluky. It seemed really fluky. I thought that the offense really took some steps forward, and then, I mean, the reason I picked Oklahoma to cover, I should have picked them on the money line, I guess. I mean, now that we know the final outcome, it's easy to say that.
Right.
But when you look at this Oklahoma defense in comparison to what everybody saw from Alabama versus LSU, which was Alabama running the football all over LSU, in particular, Jalen Milroe running the football all over LSU.
Yeah, 194 yards for him rushing against LSU. Where was that?
He was never going to do that against Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's what I said in our preview. He was never going to do that against Oklahoma. Oklahoma against Danny Stutzman, who didn't even have a great game. He had 4 tackles. He didn't even have a great game. This wasn't even his best game. But Billy Bowman was the one who stepped up as a safety. And, it's... I love that comment. By the way, that's a throwback. I love that we have throwbacks on the show, but this wasn't even a great performance by this Oklahoma defense. Is kind of what I'm getting at. I thought that they were flying around the football. Everybody had a decent game. Nobody had a great game. The most tackles on this football, on this side of the football, was 5. And 3 players tied for 5 tackles on this football team for Oklahoma. Des Malone, Billy Bowman, and Dasan McCullough all had 5 tackles. Only Des Malone had 5 solo tackles. But my point is, this defense showed up for Oklahoma. And
yeah,
obviously,
no doubt.
I mean, you held Alabama to 3 points. You held Ryan Williams to 3 points. Now, it could have very easily been 10. I think it should have been 10. Let's be honest. With the penalty that was called, but nonetheless, you still won 24-10. Let's call it. Give Alabama their 7 points. It doesn't matter. I promise you, in the SEC, Alabama fans are going to complain every time that they lose. So you might as well give them 7 points. It doesn't matter. You still won the game handedly. Kudos to Oklahoma. I think that this was a huge win for the program, who was sliding heading into their first season in the SEC. They were falling off the cliff. Like, nobody was even going to save them. They held themselves up in this football game and won the football game. I'm flabbergasted by this score. I think that this was the most surprising outcome of the weekend. 24-3, held Alabama to 3 points. Good job to the Oklahoma defense. I'm really impressed. This was outstanding.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. That got Oklahoma bowl eligible, by the way, and all they've got left is at LSU, and that's going to be a night game next week. So going to have to go into Death Valley at night to try to get that 7th win of the regular season. What a resilient season it's been for Oklahoma. I mean, you just have to say, if you don't get this win, things look a lot different. I mean, this changed a lot for Oklahoma and kind of the outlook going forward, I do believe. And maybe answered up some questions, right, at quarterback. There was a lot of questions surrounding Norman, about the quarterback hitting the transfer portal, right? Maybe this kind of solidifies his spot, there next year. And the way he ran the football this evening and the way he let the game come to him really just made all the difference in the world, I feel like. Jackson Arnold, tip of the cap to you, sir. It's been a rough year, and you're a tough son of a gun and a resilient one as well, because a lesser man would have folded up like a lawn chair many games ago, and he played like a man amongst boys at times this weekend, and something came over him, Mason. Some may say it's the gospel, right? And you call it what you want, but that boy said hallelujah. All right, let's keep it going. We've got tons more to talk about. Army, Notre Dame. This was the I told you so game of the week, right? And we weren't the only ones that told you so, but a lot of you guys said it in the comment section this week. This was just a simple case of the Jimmies and the Joes were just way too much to even worry about the X's and the O's. I could literally tell from the very first opening series for Army that this was going to get ugly.
Yeah,
I mean,
I completely agree with you. And we did not talk about this beforehand, but man,
dude,
some of those hits that Notre Dame was putting on Army, it was ugly.
no, I felt bad. I literally was like, oh man, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. I mean, that guy's going to be an officer in the military, man. Don't be messing his whole body up or whatever, man. They were picking dudes up and slamming them. They look like a bunch of pit bulls out there playing defense. Look, Notre Dame's got one of the best defenses in the country, but like I said, it would have took the scheme of the century for Army to be able to move the football consistently in this game, just because of the mere fact that Notre Dame has got NFL players all over their team. So this was a tough matchup from the word go. Statistically, whenever you compared this and all the power ratings, made it look like this game would be closer than what it was, and it just wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. So tough situation there for Army this weekend going to Notre Dame. I don't really have a ton to add to that other than the fact that Notre Dame is one of the most predictable teams this season, minus the NIU game. Like, that was obviously an outlier, but like, they haven't looked like that again. So they're one of the few teams. I mean, you got to say, like, they're one of the most consistent teams at this point. Now, it hasn't exactly been a murderer's row that they've went through either. So, yeah, it's Jimmy and my Joe right now. All right, thank you, Aramay. Appreciate it. And Millennial Diamond, I see in the comment section. What's the analysis for Texas A&M? We're obviously going to talk about that later this week. But as we kind of go through, we're going to talk about Texas and Texas A&M and their results from this weekend here in a minute, and we're going to get into that because it's the Georgia Bulldogs have clinched their spot with this loss. The loss Alabama suffered at Oklahoma. Georgia has clinched a spot in the SEC championship in Atlanta. So congratulations to all my fellow dogs out there. You know, and there was one side of me that earlier today was saying I don't even want to go to the SEC championship.
Yeah. For a
Um,
week. For a week now. Georgia
yeah,
fans have been saying like, "Oh, we don't even want to go."
yeah,
Um
we're
well,
going.
it
So
it's kind of like the Spider-Man meme. I don't know if any of y'all have seen that, but where there's a Spider-Man who's facing another Spider-Man and they're both pointing at each other.
yeah,
Where and I sent this to a friend of ours who was talking about what's going to happen with the SEC championship game. I was saying like I feel like these teams just don't want to even play in it. Why would you want to play in it? You know, Ole Miss is pointing at Georgia saying you go, and Texas is pointing at Texas is going, so they're not
no,
even pointing at anybody.
it's still isn't it? No, they're going. Well, no, if they lose to Texas A&M still goes because one of their losses, was out of conference. So then Texas would have two conference losses, right? And Texas A&M would have the head to head. So the game next
Well,
week,
Texas A&M would have three.
but one of them's out of conference.
Well, two because they've got South Carolina and
But
the
if
one
they
this
beat
weekend.
Texas,
So
then Texas has two, and Texas A&M
right,
would have the head to head.
right. So Texas A&M would go. Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah.
So we're still figuring out Texas A&M who Georgia is facing.
But it does seem like in the SEC that every team is just like, I don't want it. It's like hot
Oh
potato.
yeah, no
Just
doubt.
you take it. Shit, I don't want this. That's an extra game. I don't want it. But at the end of the day, we're going to end up with three teams in the SEC that are going to the college football playoff.
Oh man. Yeah, absolutely. That nothing will derail you like a good old text from
I don't
Eric.
want anything to rail me at all.
Derail.
Let's keep going.
Sorry if I just yelled in y'all's ear. My bad. That was impulsive right there for sure, and probably repulsive as well. Um, all right. Well, let's talk about Texas and Texas A&M because here we are talking about it. Look, Kentucky actually, I thought, put up a pretty good fight against Texas in this game. Texas does end up winning it 31-14. And so it doesn't, the final score, it wasn't close in the final score necessarily, but Kentucky had chances in this game. And they decided to bring in the freshman quarterback, and he made some freshman mistakes like you would expect him to do on the road at Texas against a really, really good defense, you know. So, I, you know, ask Tennessee whenever you got a first year quarterback, he's going to do first year quarterback stuff. It doesn't matter how good they are. I think that guy at Kentucky might end up being pretty decent. He looked like he was making some good reads, making some good throws, but just was making boneheaded decisions, once every 10 plays. And that's about the rate for a freshman. So I thought Kentucky held their own there for a little bit, but Texas is just too much. Quinn Ewers goes out early at halftime to go to the locker room, obviously dealing with some type of lower extremity injury. Would not be surprised if that's a storyline that is talked about a ton headed into this week with the Texas A&M game there at Kyle Field in week 14 here. So something to keep an eye on. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see Arch Manning or something like that at some point. But Quinn was able to do enough to be able to get it done against Kentucky. And then Texas A&M, as we've talked about, Mason, just lost to Auburn on the road at Auburn. And I don't even know how Auburn ended up winning this game, Mason. They had the worst fourth quarter and they continue to have the worst fourth quarters. We missed the boat betting against Auburn in fourth quarters this season. We missed the boat because that's been the demise of this football team. It's been terrible. And going into that last drive of the fourth quarter, Auburn had -9 yards for the quarter.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And had been moving the ball throughout the game. Obviously, Auburn, if you guys were paying attention, maybe you weren't because it was Auburn. right? And they haven't been that great this year, but they get out to a 21-0 lead in this game. And Texas A&M is able to claw their way back, which was surprising to me, to be honest with you, Mason, because Texas A&M is not a team that's going to throw it around the yard a ton on you. They're typically a run first team, and so for them to overcome a 3-touchdown deficit and tie it up, and onward in this game into multiple overtimes, I thought that was a sign of resilience for sure. But I think we just saw Auburn finally kind of get over the hump. And we'll see what it does for this team going forward. Obviously, going to be in the Iron Bowl next week against Alabama. That's going to be a game that we're certainly going to be talking about. Auburn's got a chance in that game, just like they had a chance in this one, just like they have a chance in every game if they don't shoot themselves in the foot. And they were able to make enough plays in this game to be able to get it done finally. Maybe Auburn got over a little bit of a hump here. They've got a heck of a recruiting class coming in. They've got a good core of young talent on their team that I wouldn't say has had a winning culture, but sometimes a win like this can ignite you. And if Auburn can figure out a way to beat Bama next week and go into next season, that's a lot of momentum for a team that I think has a lot of talent and a lot of talent on the way. Big win here for Auburn in multiple overtimes against A&M, who is now fighting for their life in the college football playoff talks and obviously SEC championship talks going into week 14. What did you think about this one, Mason?
I was actually really impressed with Auburn in this one. I had them pick to win, so I can't say that I was shocked necessarily. Um, at the same time, like Auburn has no business beating Texas A&M, right? Like,
Well, we have talked about it though, Mason. Statistically, this year they have not been bad. They make the worst decisions in at the end of games and can't convert. Like
yeah,
statistically, we've talked about it. They're top 30 or 40 in conceivably every category this season. Defensively, offensively, like they're not particularly terrible at anything. They're not particularly great at anything, but typically that's a recipe for winning more football games than what they've won. It's been the mental and just detrimental mistakes they've made. That's what's held them back, which they still made
yeah,
some in this game too, but you know.
but it was all a wash. I mean, when you look at the yards passed in this football game, yards rushed in this football game, they're almost identical. There's no team that took over this football game on either side of the football.
Right.
And I think that was the difference in this game. When you look at Auburn, um, and I've been saying for the past couple of weeks now, before this game at least, Auburn is the best 4-win football team in the country. When you look at their efficiency and what they've been able to do, it's actually pretty incredible that this is only their fifth win of the season. And now I'm looking at next week and saying, can they beat Alabama? Um, I think the answer is yes. Like Auburn as a program is really benefiting from some very good freshman play right now. I really like what I've seen out of DeMarcus Riddick. Um, of course, Cam Coleman has been great. Um, love what I see out of Keandre Lambert Smith. I know he's not a freshman, but there's been some really good young talent who has progressed throughout this entire season and is playing at a level that is SEC ready now, on particularly on the defensive side of the football, but also on the offensive side with the pass catchers that they have offensively. I think that this is an Auburn team that can beat anybody right now, realistically, if they're not turning the ball over. And that's been the biggest issue for them this season, just as a whole. But when you couple the fact that they protected the football in this game, on top of the fact that the freshmen have been playing a lot better and played better in this week. Um, if they're able to replicate that for weeks moving forward, then Auburn can continue to win. They've got to beat Alabama next week to get to the following week. Obviously, they're not going to the playoffs or anything like that. But let's beat Alabama next week and then build some momentum from that. And I think that Auburn can definitely do it.
No doubt about it. Look, a lot of what they did tonight was repeatable. I feel like, it wasn't some kind of secret concoction or whatever. It's a lot the same of what they've done all year, and able to get the win this time. And like I said, sometimes it's wins like that can get you over the hump, man, and it can really, really make all the difference in the world. Thank y'all so much for watching. I certainly do appreciate it. If y'all don't mind, hit that like button for me real quick. Helps get the word out. If you had an awesome week 13 of college football, please hit that like button. I know I sure did. That was a whole heck of a lot of fun. Um, let's keep it going here. We've got still tons of games to talk about here. Let's talk about Penn State and that Minnesota game real quick. What a game, right? That ended up being a one heck of a game there, and I don't think anybody really had that one penciled in as being as tight of a football game as it was. But I guess one thing that I did come away with it was I was impressed how Penn State was able to kind of lay on the football there at the end of the game, right? And get the win. Um, being able to ice it away, ice the clock away, that was pretty impressive. There was several minutes left on the clock there at the end of the game, and that was a nice long drive by Penn State to go ahead and ice that thing as they were able to win it 26-25. Minnesota drew within 1 point there at the end of the game with a field goal. Well, not the end of the game, about 5 or 6 minutes left in the game. Drew it within one with a field goal there, and that would prove to be the last point scored in the game. And Penn State wins 26-25. You guys let me know in the comment section, what did y'all think about it? Because I'm interested. I don't know where Penn State Jim went, but Penn State Jim, I'm interested to, if you're still watching, I'd like to know in the comment section what your thoughts were on the game and what your thoughts are on Penn State standing in the college football playoff at this point. But I mean, I wouldn't consider this to be a great, showing or sign here. It was a road win in the Big Ten, and that's something. But I'm not. I mean, Minnesota is a 6-win football team, right? And we've seen this with Penn State several times this season, and obviously with their loss against Ohio State, in which they weren't able to score an offensive touchdown there. Um, Penn State, do you think that they drop, Mason, with this close of a game here against Minnesota? The College Football Playoff Committee's got them ranked at 4 right this second. I've been very vocal with my thoughts on Penn State. I don't think that they are the 4th best team in the country, but College Football Playoff Committee has disagreed with me time and time again here. Do you think they drop after this?
I think that they should drop. I don't think that they will drop. Look, Penn State deserves to be in the playoffs, but they do not deserve to have a home game. That's kind of where I'm at. You beat Minnesota, a 6-5 team, by 1 point. Come on, man. I mean, it's like the old ESPN segment. Come on, man. Like I don't
Come
see it
on,
from this Penn
man.
State. I don't see it from this team. You held Minnesota to 25 points and you're some great defense. I'm not seeing it. Minnesota has been pretty good this year. I really thought that they were going to come away with the upset in this one. It would have been fitting for the way that this Saturday went all day for the most part. But Penn State just had more dudes really on defense. Um, Kind of got outmanned in this one. Minnesota did at the end of the day, but I don't think that. I mean, if we're gonna kind of relate this game to the playoff talk, I don't. I think that this committee should just reassess everything. Because when you look at what the Big Ten looks like right now, Ohio State, yes, they beat Indiana, they beat Penn State, but lost to Oregon, and I think that my ranking would say Oregon's number one, Ohio State is number two. Everything else we need to just kind of burn down and restructure, right? Let's look at who teams have beaten as opposed to who they've lost to. And that seems to be the latter, unfortunately, seems to be what this committee is focused on, is who these teams have lost to. And I just feel like when you look at their strength of schedule, who they've beaten should have a little bit extra weight. I While I think Penn State deserves to be in the playoffs, I think that they deserve to be in the top 12. I don't think that they deserve a home playoff game. I think I would like to see them moved outside of the top 8. I don't know that the committee is going to agree with me here. I think that they say within the top 8 this week and potentially into the actual playoffs, unfortunately.
Well, I said last week, I told you on the phone, I talked about it on the show. I felt like the College Football Playoff Committee has painted themselves in a corner with Penn State. And whenever you do these college football playoff rankings, we've had experience with the 14 playoff. You have to be careful getting teams up too far. There's really no going back because if they, I mean, Penn State's not going to, they're not going to lose next week, right? I can't remember who they even play. It's nobody. And just like this week was supposed to be nobody, so maybe it does end up being a close game. But with that being said, I don't love this team. I don't love the offense. The defense has left them out to dry a couple times, but maybe it's the offense not sustaining drives. I don't know. I didn't like scope this game out really hard. I had it on one screen, and it wasn't the game that I was just like watching the most intently because this was not supposed to be a football game. But once Minnesota got out early, I had to put it on one of my screens, and I did start to watch it. And I just Penn State looks different than the rest, in my opinion, as far as like the top 5 goes. And I don't think that they deserve to be there. Do they deserve to be in the top 12? We can have a debate about that. I mean, I think it's going to be hard to keep them out with one loss and the way everybody else is taking losses, and they're in the Big Ten. So it is what it is on that. But yeah, Mason, I agree with you. I think they should be one of the teams on the road in the college football playoff. I
Yes.
don't think they should be one of the
That's
teams
my
that,
only argument. Like
yeah,
Penn State, just pack it up, go play somebody on the road. I don't know if we see it, but
yeah.
that's my only argument. They've got Maryland at the end of the year next week, and
Oh
I
yeah, they
mean,
look awesome, huh?
yeah,
Um, Eric Kendrew, thanks for watching, bro. I appreciate it. He said, "Can we talk more about the Louisiana State Mud Dogs?" Here, I hear Bobby really led the team to a victory, multiple sacks, multiple tackles for loss, and continued team hydration. Don't sleep on them. Yeah, those Louisiana State Mud Dogs, they're probably about the best team in Louisiana at this point, right? As LSU's not very good, it doesn't seem like, all of a sudden. Um, the question is, how are Carson Beck's eyes so far apart? You land a plane between those eyes, dude.
Eric,
His
is your name actually Taylor? That's the real question because I think I know who this is. Um, is your
you
name
can't.
actually Taylor? Do
You're
you go by
Mason's out
Taylor?
here doxing people. Where does he work, Mason?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So
I'm
funny.
kidding. I'm fucking with you. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Excuse my French. Um, got a little comfortable there. Look, uh,
We can
Carson
say the
Beck's,
f bomb. It's a Saturday night. Look,
yeah.
for those of you who are new to the channel, Saturday nights we are just like you guys. We watch football, we drink beer, and then we come
Speaking
on
of
and talk
which, let
about it.
me let me grab
Which
one.
is a terrible idea, by the way. Like, don't come on to YouTube and like just don't record live when you've been drinking all fucking day. Like, it's a terrible idea, but that's what we do. That's what we do. And we're here with you guys drinking beer or whatever. I drink whiskey. But anyways, we're just here chilling and kind of reacting to what's going on. If you guys want a more
Cheers.
button up podcast, I go listen to what Fox is putting out. Go listen to what CBS is putting out. ESPN. I mean, all that dumb shit. I mean, you can go listen to them. We're gonna sit here and drink a beer with you and kind of wind down for a Saturday evening. And
Yep.
I say Saturday evening.
Cheers
It's
to that.
it's technically Sunday morning on the East Coast.
I'd
So
put one of these bad
cheers.
boys in the fridge out here for a good, just something good to happen. And there goes the top. It's off. Here we go. All right. Let's keep it going. We still got more football to talk about here. Thank the sweet baby Jesus. Boise State, they clinched their way to the Mountain West championship game with a win over Wyoming. Was it beautiful? I wouldn't say so. Was the weather disgusting in Wyoming? Probably. I don't even know, actually. I should have looked at that. I paid attention to what was going on in this game, but it was a defensive slugfest here. Not much going on through the air. Ashton Genty was like the reason that Boise State won this game, honestly. His success on the ground was the difference in this one. Boise State is able to get it done 17-13 in an unexpected test, right? And as I said, I know the weather can get pretty dicey out there at Wyoming there towards the end of the season. So maybe that was the case, and that was part of the reason he wasn't able to throw the football. But Boise State, being as resourceful as they've been all season, they're able to rush the ball for like 182 yards in this game. Ashton Genty, 11 straight games of 125 plus yards rushing. First time that's been done by any college football player since 1996. So more history continuing to be made by Ashton Genty. He's a sure lock to go to New York for the Heisman ceremony, right? At this point, I just can't see any way of getting around that, especially with a year where I feel like offensively, there's just not as many good offenses, or maybe there's a lot better defenses out there this year. That's a discussion for a whole nother day. But Ashton Genty continues to do his thing and takes his Broncos to where they want to go, Mason. And that's conference championship weekend. Again, it's going to be against Tulane. It's going to be. Oh wait, no, that's not one. That's not the one against Tulane, is it? Um, I'm sorry, I was thinking of the ACC there for a second. That's my bad. Who is Boise State playing? Y'all let me know in the comment section. Who are they even playing in that
Good
Mountain
question.
West?
We're a Power Four only podcast, so we don't we don't keep up with the Broncos.
Oh my
Uh,
God. Yeah. Way to stir up the hornet's nest. We have multiple blue Bronco sightings here on the channel multiple times a week. We see them out in nature all the time. Pretty wild to see one whenever you do see it in person and up close. Pretty cool stuff. Majestic, certainly. Shout out Double O. SMU at Virginia.
by the way, it's
I
Colorado State. They're in the Mountain West. Colorado State is 5-0 in the conference.
that I
So
actually knew that. Yeah.
yeah, Boise State versus Colorado State. Actually, the Boise State versus UNLV game kind of decided this.
Mm,
So had that game not occurred, Colorado State would not be in this potentially. It would be a tiebreaker between UNLV and Colorado State. So just interesting little side note there.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
also on that game, Ashton Genty went out in that game. I don't know if you were kind of keeping up with that at all, but yeah, Ashton Genty was out for that game for a minute. When he came back in on that offensive drive, they scored the touchdown. So you look at that game and you think if you had not had Ashton Genty, you probably don't end up winning that football game.
Hmm.
I mean, it
I
really
agree.
is that decisive of a score there at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Big stuff for Boise. Big win there. And now they're going to get their opportunity to make their way into the college football playoff, right where you want to be, right in the sweet spot. And that's with a bye there in the first round. So, all right, let's keep it going. SMU 33, Virginia 7. SMU just continues to do what they do. They're really good at stopping the run. They're really good offensively, just in general. I Virginia was kind of on a roll a little bit, Mason. I mean, Virginia has been playing their best ball here of late. So for SMU to go on the road to Virginia, where I know it was cold and those Dallas boys probably wasn't a whole lot used to that. And it's all unfamiliar environment in a brand new conference. I just, SMU looks like the real deal to me. They, as far as the ACC goes, I'm not saying national championship picture, but I think SMU stands a really good shot against Miami or Clemson or whoever it ends up being. I guess at this point, it would be Miami and SMU, right? I don't think that there's still tiebreaker stuff going on there with Clemson. But with that being said, I think SMU and Miami is going to be one hell of an ACC championship game, and I assume that's what it's going to be. So SMU does their thing on the road. What did you get a chance to take a look at that one?
What is there to look at, Mark? I mean,
Yeah.
SMU is superior to Virginia. I kind of watched it early because actually I watched it early and I knew that SMU was going to win. And then I watched it late because I had SMU in the fourth quarter of this football game, which they covered for me because they outscored Virginia 13-7 in the fourth quarter. I was a little bit worried when I saw that Virginia had scored late, but it wasn't. It actually ended up working out for me because, like I said, SMU scored 13 points in the fourth quarter. Virginia couldn't score that for the entire game, so it ended up being a pretty solid cover for me.
Yeah, absolutely. SMU's looking good. They're in a really good spot here. I think they're in a really good headspace. They did not start the season out. They're one of these teams that's been a grower and not necessarily a shower to start the season. And
I can relate.
I can relate as well. I can relate as well. It's actually a little cold out here now. So I'm little running a little low on K1 kerosene. So not super warm out here right now. So I can definitely relate. SMU takes care of business 33-7, and continues to dominate their ACC schedule as they have not lost a game since joining the ACC conference. And I think that kind of tells you a little bit more about that conference there. All right. BYU drops another game, Mason. And at the same time, Colorado drops a game. So Arizona State takes care of BYU 28-23. Did you see all the hectic shit at the end of this game?
Yes.
Holy cow. That was just wild. And
Yeah, I knew as soon as the game was technically over, right? Arizona State fans start rushing the field. I knew as soon as they started rushing the field that there was still time on the clock. Even though in my mind I was thinking that the game's over. Arizona State won. For whatever reason, as soon as they started rushing the field, I thought, yeah, this game's not done yet.
yeah.
Um, it was actually kind of embarrassing that they couldn't just call the game because, I mean, it was
One of the goalposts
clearly
was
done.
already down.
Well, and that was the weird thing is Arizona State, their stadium has a sort of retractable like goalpost. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
That's a thing. That's a thing to deflect fans from tearing down the
Okay,
goalpost.
so
Like
is that what
it makes
happened?
it makes total
So
sense.
they didn't tear it down. It's that's a new thing, Mason, where they're
It
on a
is.
hinge.
It
Yeah.
is. It
Yeah.
is. It hinges down
Okay.
so that yeah, and like kudos to Arizona State for figuring that out. I mean,
Well, it was
why doesn't everybody have this sort of setup for the field goal? Like Why is that not commonplace? It does not make sense at all because these football programs make so much money. They could all do it. It
Well,
is super easy. This one company who is creating the hinging field goal post would monopolize the market in college football. And they should, because everybody should be
well,
doing this. It
Well,
just
nobody
makes too
wants
much
to pay
sense.
for it. That's the thing. You remember Tennessee ripping their goalpost down in 2022? It was 2 days later, they're going and hitting up all of their donors asking for donations to pay for the goalpost.
Yeah.
Needed to raise $10,000, you
Yeah.
know? Furthermore, I don't know who your goalpost guy is, but I think he's probably ripping you off, you know? I think you can probably find somebody lower than 10,000 to get you a goalpost. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Or maybe they got
We
one of those good retractable ones. Who
Hey,
knows?
I'll find you one for $5,000. I'll find you one.
Are you gonna go get the one out of the river? You gonna go get it back? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
look, um, that was a very interesting ending to that football game, no doubt about it. Kenny Dillingham, I thought he was going to fight someone. Like, I literally thought he
Oh
was
yeah.
going to fight those refs, and how he didn't get flagged, he must have been yelling, but like youth pastor yelling or something. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, it's the same magic that Shador Sanders was using when he was pushing the refs and wasn't getting a flag. When he was basically like beating up the refs and they weren't even like flagging him for like hitting them. Like it made no sense. But
well, you're racist. Go ahead. No, I'm just kidding.
I, I have no further comments. I voted for Trump, and I can't I can't defend this in any
Well,
way.
then we know now. We know
Um,
you're a racist now. Um, it's settled. It's settled science, and you can't argue science, or you are something really bad.
you're a racist to the second power. You're like
I,
exponentially racist.
I think this would be a good time to tell all you guys that we'll be starting a new podcast. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's keep it going. All right,
Called Are
Kansas.
You Racist? That's
Are
the
you,
podcast name.
I think that's a kind of a play off of the movie "I Am I a Racist" by Matt Walsh. So we might get sued over that one. Um,
Nah,
uh,
he'll love it.
imitation is the best form of flattery. So
He'll be our
maybe
first guest, dude. We'll be good.
only if he wears the ponytail thing that he wore in the video. Um, Colorado at Kansas. This was a game that I picked on the money line this week. If you watched the betting show with us on Thursday, then you got the inside track on that one. It was plus money line, baby. Kansas 2 weeks in a row has taken down. We'll just go ahead and call them the Kansas Giant Slayers. How about that? That they slayed a couple of the Giants in the Big 12 there in Colorado and BYU. And now BYU, of course, turns around and drops another game. So this game was kind of predictable, honestly. But the way that Kansas was able to run the football, man, pretty astonishing, and really really hard to come back from that if you're a team like Colorado. And you just got to tip your cap to Kansas. The game plan was there. The game plan was absolutely there. And we talked about it. The one thing that has really propelled Colorado this season versus what we saw out of them last season was the fact that their defensive line was better. And that wasn't the case in this game. They regressed. They regressed back to the mean. And that defensive line was not able to stop a nosebleed this weekend. So that ends up costing Colorado. And it honestly, I guess it begs the question now, Mason, with that loss, what are we looking at with the Big 12 standings? And I'm kind of pulling those up right now because I haven't even wrapped my head around it yet. So at this point, you've got, is this right? Yeah. So Arizona State and BYU are tied for second, but Arizona State's got the head-to-head there. So Arizona State's got they have this out of order on here for some reason, but both of them 9-2. Arizona State's got the head-to-head over BYU. What am I missing? They should be in there. But let me tell y'all how this looks. Iowa State is 6-2 and 9-2 overall. BYU is the same exact thing, 6-2, 9-2 overall. Arizona State is the same exact thing. So you've got three-way tie there, and then you've got Colorado that's 6-2 in the conference, but has 3 losses overall. So they're, also got a 5-way tie there for first place at this point in the Big 12. What a absolute knot that we've got at the top of this conference. So this is going to take us right on into week 14, and I guess possibly even a tiebreaker. We're going to have to really kind of look at this and see who's got who left to play, Mason. I see that Iowa State has got to play Kansas State this upcoming week. They'll be hosting Kansas State, right? BYU is going to be hosting Houston, so BYU should be able to win that one. Arizona State is going to be hosting Arizona. And then Colorado is hosting Oklahoma State. So I like Colorado to win for sure this weekend. I like BYU to win for sure this weekend. Arizona State and Iowa State still got some work cut out for them. So I think BYU and Colorado may still have the inside track here. Gonna need BYU needs a loss from Arizona State though. What are your thoughts, Mason?
I think scheduling wise, it looks like Arizona is in, right? I mean,
Arizona
BYU.
State?
Excuse me, yeah, Arizona State. Arizona State should be in. BYU is probably in. Iowa State has Kansas State, right? So
Correct.
Can they beat Kansas State? And then right now, Arizona State and BYU hold the tiebreakers. They're in over Iowa State, regardless of their win. I think we're talking about an Arizona State versus BYU Big 12 championship game. Regardless of who is in the championship game, we know that this is the only path to the college football playoff for either of these teams. They have to win they have to win the Big 12 championship game to make it to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
There is not going to be a second team in. With this record in this conference, you're not going to make it in. Same with the ACC. There's going to be one team in the ACC that makes it. It's either going to be SMU or Miami at this point. That's kind of what I'm thinking. With the SEC, I think that the way that this has unfolded this week, Tennessee is in. That's the huge benefactor of this weekend is Tennessee. They're in since Ole Miss lost, since Alabama lost. Tennessee is definitely in the college.
That's true. That's a good point. Tennessee certainly benefited from this, no doubt.
Yeah, they're third in the SEC at this point, so how could they not?
Right.
And actually in fourth in the SEC is Texas A&M. In fifth, guess who's fifth, Mark?
Alabama?
South Carolina.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, who else did South Carolina lose to this season? It was all 3 SEC losses, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But so Alabama has the head-to-head with them because Alabama beat them.
Yeah, well,
but it doesn't matter. I mean, they're not going to SEC championship anyway. But interesting stuff, man. What a knot we have. What a crazy freaking year, dude. I mean, this is just absolutely wild. Absolutely freaking wild. We got a lot of stuff that we got to kind of sift through this week on the show and kind of figure out how we feel like this is going to go. Double O'Neill came on here earlier and hit us with the side eye and said, "How's your bracket looking?" Truth is, I don't even really know how. I don't know. How's anybody's bracket looking? I don't know.
Great question.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. All right, What else we got? Miami able to take care of Wake Forest in the second half, 42-14. The game was pretty close there for a little bit. Wake Forest made too many mistakes, gave Miami too many chances, and Miami capitalized on that, 42-14. Miami still cruising right along. I was going to see, who does Miami have left on their schedule? They have got, who is it? Syracuse, at Syracuse next week. So that'll definitely be a game that we'll be talking about for sure. So make sure that you guys are tuned in, because I'm telling you, you never know. Syracuse at times has had a really good offense. At times they've been mistake prone, but they've had a really good offense at times, and they're going to be at home. You never know in this day and age of college football. You just really never know. South Carolina took care of business. Iowa State beats Utah 31-28. We just kind of talked about the Big 12 there and what that picture is looking like. Iowa State is able to fend off Utah. Utah's still fighting until the last bell here, Mason. They don't have any quit in them. Missouri takes care of Mississippi State 39-20. No real, college football playoff implications there. Illinois takes care of Rutgers in comeback fashion 38-31 to cover that spread. I knew I should have bet on Illinois in that one, and I didn't. Shame on me.
What's crazy is I almost took Rutgers in this one on the money line, and had they lost, I would have felt like it was a safe play. Like Rutgers had this game in the bag
They
up
did.
until very late in this football game. I'm glad I didn't make that bet, but I was definitely leaning Rutgers, who has not won a ranked matchup in, I want to say it's like 59 matches at this point, or games in this point.
Wow.
It's absolutely bonkers how many games it's been since they won a ranked or beat a ranked opponent, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah, man, this has been a really, really crazy weekend of college football, guys. And I'm certainly glad that we decided to come on and get on here tonight and come hang out with you guys and talk some of it. Anything else that y'all want to talk about, put it in the comment section right now. I'm going to read some of the comments here for a second. PNW Adventurer, no top 10 team hasn't had a close game. Yeah, no, everybody has. Most season, everybody has at least a close game. Even some of the best teams in college football history. I can think of 2019 LSU. They barely beat Auburn that year, who was not even a good team. They barely beat Auburn. Joe Burrow and that Tigers group that was all time offensively, no doubt about it. Auburn had their number. Just barely beat them in a low scoring battle there. So. Yeah, even some of the best have close games, but I get your point. The parity this season is just off the chain, no doubt about it. Did you know that SMU has to pay their own way for travel and lodging to play in this ACC? I did know that, Peanut Butter Posse. Isn't that wild, y'all? Here goes SMU to the ACC championship game, not making any money from the ACC and totally paying their own way. They got that Dallas money though, so don't you ever forget that big Texas economy money. They got it. They got that oil money going on, and that old money, that dusty money. PNW Adventure, don't matter how impressed you are, a win is a win. And they have 0 losses. No one else can say that. I guess you're talking about Oregon. Oregon's had some close games this year.
Pacific Northwest Adventurer. I'm gonna go with Oregon.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. PNW doesn't ring a bell to me, but anybody out west, I'm sure it probably does. All right, I think I read some of these earlier already. Millennial Diamond, need to do an updated CFB bracket. I'm glad that you brought that up. Guys, we are going to be live tomorrow. We do this every single Sunday, and we will have an updated college football playoff bracket tomorrow. We will have an updated ranking We'll have all that stuff, and we're also going to go through some of these matchups. Which ones will it be? Probably Georgia Tech will be one of them that we're going to probably talk about tomorrow. But others that we'll talk about this week, some of them will be tomorrow, some of them will be Tuesday. Y'all know how we do it. We're not going to do all the same games both days. We're going to talk about some of the lesser matchups tomorrow, but there's going to be so many good ones going into rivalry weekend that there's going to be some good games to talk about tomorrow as well as Tuesday. But Georgia Tech will probably be one of them. I know we've got South Carolina, Clemson coming up. We've got Texas A&M. That'll certainly be a Tuesday one. We're going to have the game, Ohio State and Michigan. That's going to be one that we'll probably go ahead and talk about tomorrow, I would think. We've got a ton of stuff coming at you on the First and Long College Football Show. So this really was just a little bit of kindling added to the fire here that we've already got burning on the show. We are going to have a great show tomorrow. Tons of stuff to talk about, all the rankings, all that stuff. Come and join us. Y'all hit that like button on the way out. Don't let your boys down. We're counting on you. We're trying to keep the lights on over here at First and Long College Football Show, and hitting that like button is 100% free and 100% helps a whole hell of a lot. What a great weekend of college football. Toast to you guys. I'm going to go finish my beer. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see y'all all real soon tomorrow on Sunday. Thanks again. Y'all have a good one.